Hello everyone, this is Ashley Tucker. Thank you for joining me today. For today's card, I'm going to be using a couple of older stamp sets from Simon Says Stamp's Stamptember release. This first stamp set that I'm using is the Birthday Numbers stamp set, and I'm going to be stamping the numbers 2, 0, 1, and 9 from that to make a New Year's card. So I stamped them with my MISTI tool on a piece of Canson watercolor paper, which I prepped with a powder tool for embossing, and I stamped them with Simon Says Stamp Embossing Ink, and then I embossed them with Alabaster white embossing powder from Brutus Monroe. I'm going to be painting these numbers in with some Distress Oxide inks, which I'm smooshing onto my Holtz Glass Mat. This is one of the many reasons why I really love this mat. Before getting this mat, if I wanted to do a technique like this, I'd have to get out something else for me to smoosh the inks onto, but because I have this wonderful mat, I can just smoosh them right onto that. I don't have to get anything else out, and it's really easy to clean. So I wanted to use a rainbow of colors, so I picked out the colors Picked Raspberry, Spiced Marmalade, Squeezed Lemonade, Twisted Citron, Salty Ocean, and Wilted Violet. Now when I first went in with the blue color, I was using tumbled glass, but I realized that I wanted it to be a lot brighter, so I decided to change out the tumbled glass for the Salty Ocean. I think that this stamp set is perfect for a New Year's card. I remember when I first bought this back in September, I had this card in mind when I bought it, and I'm so glad that I finally can make it. Another idea that I had with this stamp set was to use the numbers 3, 2, and 1 and have it say 3, 2, 1 Happy New Year. After I finished the first layer of color, I came back in with a second layer, but this time I made sure not to completely cover that first layer because I wanted some differences in the saturation of color. I sprayed some water into my hand, and then I flicked some water droplets onto the paper, and then I lifted them with a paper towel. This pulls up some of the ink in those areas. Next, I took a piece of Bazzill Licorice Twist cardstock and I prepped it really well with my powder tool for embossing. I took the Mod Stripe stencil from Simon Says Stamp and I placed it over the top of that cardstock, and then I smooshed my embossing ink into the stencil, which transfers the design onto the paper. I am creating a long card today, so the stencil didn't fit across the entire piece of paper. So I did the stenciling on one half of the paper, and then I did my best to puzzle together the stencil on the other side, and then I did that side as well. The stenciling is a little bit messy, especially because I didn't tape down the paper or the stencil at all, but for this particular design, I actually kind of like that. The embossing powder that I used is Rainbow Sparkle Embossing Powder from Brutus Monroe, which is a clear embossing powder with colorful sparkles in it. I popped up the black panel onto a card base with some foam tape. The size of the card base is 4 by 8. I fussy cut out all of the numbers that I painted, and then I put some foam tape on the back of all of them and popped them up onto my card. I used my T-square ruler to help me line up the numbers so that they're nice and straight. I added some shading to the numbers with some gray Copic markers to help them pop a little bit more. I think that this step makes a big difference. I do think that the numbers looked good before, but they were a little bit difficult to read, so just adding a little bit of simple shading helps them to stand out a little bit better and makes them a lot clearer. I placed all of the marker caps above the card so that you can see what colors I'm using. I started with the lightest color and then I worked my way up to the darkest. Every time I used a darker color, I would come back in with the lighter color and blend it out. Next, I took out the DECO Borders and Corners stamp set, which is another stamp set from Simon Says Stamp's Stamptember release. I picked out the sentiment which says wishing you the best, and I stamped it onto some Bazzill Licorice Twist cardstock with Simon Says Stamp Embossing Ink, and then I embossed it with Alabaster white embossing powder. I cut that sentiment down to a strip, and then I popped it up onto the middle of the 2019 using some foam tape. Again, I used my T-square ruler in order to make sure that that sentiment is nice and straight. A T-square ruler is such an inexpensive tool, but it's such a useful tool. I went over that sentiment strip with my Wink of Stella glitter brush because you can't have too much glitter on a New Year's card. Next, I took a bunch of sequins and I spread them across the card, going from the bottom left corner to the top right corner, and I glued them down using my Gina K Connect glue. I used 2 different mixes of Simon Says Stamps sequins here. I have the birthday cake sequins and I have the party time sequins. I absolutely love both of these sequin mixes, especially those little stars that come from the party time sequin mix. Once I finished placing those, this card was all done. Here's a closer look at the finished card. You can really see all of that sparkle in that embossing powder. Thank you for watching today. I hope you really enjoyed this New Year's card design featuring some products from Simon Says Stamp. All of the supplies that I used can be found in the description down below. If you enjoyed watching today and you have not subscribed to my channel yet, I would encourage you to hit that subscribe button so that you can see all of my future videos. I'm going to be back with a new video on Wednesday. Again, thank you for watching. I appreciate all of you and I want to wish you a Happy New Year.